Welcome everybody again to this last installment of A Cup of Tableau for this season. For those of you who are joining me for the first time, it's just a short session. Um, take about 15 minutes, and I will be sharing a little bit of Tableau knowledge with you. Um, just simple things that I can explain in about 15 minutes. Feel free to grab a coffee or anything else, just a short break away from work and just getting some knowledge. Uh, Also, this session will be recorded. Um, any questions that you may have, you can use chat or the Q&A, and I'll either answer them during the session or at the end of the session, depending on your particular question. My name is Dan. I am your host of today. I am the head of consultancy and trading at the Information Lab Netherlands. And today I'll be talking about things I wish I knew when I started working with Tableau. I don't know if you have been working with Flow already for a little bit or you're just getting started, but there's always these tricks or these things that you see other people who use Tableau display or use, and it just helps you get so much quicker at working. And today I decided I will share some of those things that I know now, but that could have been helpful during my early stages when I just got my little Tableau feet wet, so to speak. Um, I'll be sharing that knowledge with you. Hopefully, there's a couple of tips that you didn't know yet. Um, if there's anything that you're missing or thinking, hey, this you should really find this, feel free to drop me a link to a blog if you know of a good tip trick. Now, the first thing that I'll be talking about is drag and drop. Tableau is a massive, massive drag and drop tool as well, aside from all the things that we can type in, but Tableau is also well known for some drag and drop features. And I'll be showing you drag and drop with regards to workbooks, uh, Excel files, calculated fields. There's some dragging and dropping options there that I actually didn't know. And if you want to sort of understand better table calcs, um, how to drag and drop those as well. So what I'll do, I'll just open up my Tableau. I have some Tableau prepared for me. Let's say I'm working in Tableau, and a colleague sends me a new Tableau file, such as this one. It's called such data prep. I was doing some data prep challenges. This is week 27 of last year. Uh, this is something that I created, but let's say my colleague sent this and I want to have a look. I can either double click this or I can also drag and drop. And as you can see, I'm getting this sort of plus symbol. So it's a simple left mouse click. I'm dragging it into the Tableau instance that I already have open. I release. It takes a little while, but in the background, Tableau is actually it's on my other screen. So that's pretty useful. But in the meantime, I've now opened a Tableau workbook complete with all the sheets. It's a dashboard. There's a data connection, everything that's in the workbook. As you can see all the way here on top, it says there, it's the SUTS Data Prep 27. So you can simply open a workbook by dragging and dropping. Some people really like that and enjoy that dragging and drop feature. I still catch myself clicking a lot of the times, but dragging and dropping is pretty easy. And the same goes for Excel files. Like I said, drag and drop, you can even drag and drop Excel files into your work. So let's say I have my join example. This is an Excel file. I want to connect to this data. So rather than going to my data source and connection, I'll just drag that in, empty sheet. And as you can see, I immediately have my data connection, my data source. I have a connection to the Excel, and I can start dragging in the sheets that I would require. So I didn't have this connection before. Show you once more, right click, I'll close that connection, have a connection to a different data source, got this Excel file, I'll drag that in, left click drag, and we're there. Simple as that. Now I have a connection. Um, I can connect even to the data, and I can start working with that data. So that's pretty easy. Now let's say I'm connected to Sample Superstore, something you can do at home as well, and I am creating a calculated field. So creating my calculated field. I name my field. Of course, I always name my field. I already know that I'm going to use a few fields. For instance, I'm going to use sales or profit. I can just drag in that from the left-hand side from my data pane and simply drag in the field that I want to use. Um, Type in sum of profit divided by the sum of, well, let's do sales, the profit ratio. And I can simply drag in that sales field from the left-hand side. Again, drag and drop feature. I'm not making this field right now. Another thing that we can do, let's say we have for each state, or let's say for each category, I have my sales, and I created this with a right click to be a quick table calculation. I want to have a running total. I'm actually curious how that works. I can drag this field that I've just created is actually called an ad hoc calculation as well. I can drag it into my data pane, and suddenly I'm creating this table calc. Just have to name this table calc for running total. And if I right click this field and I edit, I can see there's a running sum of sales table down. Very similar to when we create an ad hoc calculation, I have to drag that field from my visualization into my data pane. I can do the same if I use the field and create a table calc. It's a nice drag and drop feature. Now I'll just clean this up real quick. There's this one clear sheet. Those you haven't seen that, great tip as well. Clearing the sheet removes everything from the sheet. If you have Tableau open for the very first time, you may have something called Show Me open. And every time you open Tableau, that Show Me is actually taking up, in my opinion, valuable space that you could be using to actually see what's happening on the right-hand side. So clicking on Show Me closes it. If I now open up a new instance of Tableau, this Show Me will also be not open standard. So I would definitely recommend always closing this. When you close Tableau, the next time you open it up, this will still be closed. So that's, in my opinion, uh, this takes up a lot of space and we don't need it. Speaking of standard, if I'm creating a calculated field, if you do the same thing, yours might look like this, just a white space. Now on the right-hand side, you have this extra toolbar. It's not doing it. There we go. I'll just name my calculation. Because on the right-hand side, we actually have the sidebar, which is super useful because it gives me an idea of what type of functions do we have, what type of number functions do we have, or what type of date functions do we have, for instance. And every time I click along these functions on the right-hand side, it's also giving me an idea of what is happening. What is date name? What does date part actually do? With an example, with the added bonus, if we're dragging in a calculated field into my other calculated field, if we're clicking on profit ratio now on the right-hand side, it's actually giving me the exact statement of that calculated field. So it's giving you a hint on the content of any calculated field that you're using again in a calculated field. Very, very useful instead of having to close down, right click, edit profit ratio. What was profit ratio again? Yes. Oh, yeah, perfect. And then I lost my calculated field. So in this case, if we have that open on the right hand side, this sidebar, and every time we click on profit ratio, we now see it's sum profit divided by sum of sales. So in my opinion, I always have this open. This is also saved by Tableau in a way that if I have this open and I close Tableau, I open it up again, this will still be open. So I always have this open. Another quick win that you could do, if you notice that you're formatting your graphs a lot or you're formatting the same thing over and over again, you could go to Format, Workbook, and for instance say, you know what, my fonts, they don't need to be Tableau book. I personally, I always enjoy Verdana. but also, for instance, grid lines. If you notice you're removing grid lines a lot and visual best practices, you might have to say, you know what, I don't use a lot of grid lines. I can actually turn them off automatic. So they'll standard. If I now create a visualization, it will be set to off. Just to show you sales. There's no grid lines. And if I need to add grid lines, I can do that for this particular visualization. So if you're thinking of, for instance, going for your certified professional, this is something that you could definitely use. So this format workbook and doing some standard formatting for your axis rulers, your axis ticks, but also for your grid lines. So that's a standard thing you can do for your workbooks. Great little trick there. Another thing that you could be using if we go for this for analytics pane and we adding a constant line, what I'll quickly do, I'll just fit this to the entire view so it fills up the view a little bit better. Now I can add a constant line for the entire table. And maybe I want this to be 500,000. Now you could do 500 and then 1, 2, 3, or you can type in 500K, hit enter. Tableau recognizes you have used the K and it will automatically be adding those three zeros. If we're setting that value and you know what, I need it to be 5 million, I can type in a capital M and I have 5 million. So that's a quicker way of adding larger numbers by using the K, the M, etc., etc. So that could go pretty fast, as you can see. Now, speaking of pretty fast, sometimes if you're great at creating calculated fields, and you'll know I'm going to create multiple calculated fields, calculated fields, just name this real fast. A quick way of creating a lot of calculated fields without having to open up a calculator editor all the time is using these forward slashes. Normally, you'll be using those if you're wanting to add a comment. So, for instance, we're doing the sum of profit. I'm going to be the sum of profit divided by the sum of sales. Or I can do, I know, a fixed calculation, such as a fixed based on state level, do the sum of sales as well. Now I have two fields in, and this is going to give me an error. But what I can do, I can just highlight this first field, drag that to the left-hand side. As you can see, it says here field 1. And I can do the same for that fixed calculation that I created. I can drag what I've created to the left-hand side, and I'm getting my fixed. So as you can see, Tableau is using that comment field as the name for a new field. And it's going to be, I'm just going to close this off. I right click, edit, and it's exactly that, what I've just described. So it's fixed per state, the sum of sales. So if I know a lot of calculated fields that I need to make or want to make, instead of having to open up multiple calculated editors, I can do that in one go. Now, final trick of today is sometimes, particularly when you're using date functions or dates, and I'll just remove the sum of sales. Actually, I'll place that here, segment, and I will quickly remove any reference lines. When we're using order date, for instance, in our visualization, what you often notice is drag that onto columns, and I want this to be months maybe, and I want it to be continuous. I can right click, and I can go to the month, and it is continuous. Now, this is a lot of clicks in my opinion. If you have a Windows machine, you can do the same thing with a right click. So it's right click your field from data pane and releasing that right click, and you're getting this particular menu where it says, you know what? Do you want to have order date continuous? Do you want to have order date discrete? Do you want which date part would you like or which date value would you like? I'm getting a lot of options here. Now it's not only, and I'll just click now. It's not just for dates. I can do the same for sales if I remove sales for now. I could right click. If you're on a Mac, by the way, it's options and left click. If you're on a Windows machine, it's a right click. So left click sales, I'm letting that go. And suddenly I'm getting this option. Do I want this to be not aggregated at all? If I want it to be aggregated, what type of aggregation would I like? Sum, average, median, etc., etc. So that right click gives you a lot faster and a lot more options than that left click. Now I know it's a quarter past, but if you'll indulge me in a little more time, a few more minutes, I will show you a little trick that is a great way of working with Tableau or with a workbook. Now let's say this is a bonus tip. Let's say I have this particular, I'll just quickly show you what's in the workbook. And as you can see, I drag and dropped it and it's opening on my other screen. So I'll quickly drag this to the normal screen. This is a visualization I made a lot earlier, but let's say someone sent this to you and you really like these pictures or these images that are in there, or this is a workbook and you would like to have the data and the Excel that is in that data. Now we could take screenshots and maybe pick out the image. Not the best way of doing that. It is good to know, I'll not save this. If it is a TWBX, for instance, that's actually a zipped file. What I can do, I can right click. I will duplicate it just because always be wary if you're changing anything. Now that extension of TWBX, I can actually rename. I can call this zip. So now it becomes a zip file. Yet use the zip. So now I have a zip file. I can double click that and suddenly I've opened. I have a folder with a .twbe, TWB, not a TWBX. I have the images, so I can actually use those images someone sent me. And I also have the data, which is a temporary hyper file, so I can extract that data if I don't have that already. So changing your TWBX to a .zip allows you to open up what's inside, and you can find the data. If it's an Excel file, you could even have the Excel file and any images that are part of that. Of course, Jyoti is just asked if I can explain dragging in Excel again. Of course I can. Let's say I will close this connection that I currently have. I am working in Sample Superstore and I decide I also want to connect to this Excel file that I have in another folder. Left click, drag it in, and drag it in anywhere. As you can see, the plus symbol doesn't change. Release, and I'm in my data connection in the same Tableau work. So it's as simple as left click, drag it in there, and you're done. Now I can start working further, and I have my connection, and I could start working with any of that data that I have. So that is it. I know we talked a lot. I'll quickly show you what we have been doing. I've shown you a lot of drag and drop features. I have shown you how to unselect show me using the side menu for your calculated field, that sidebar. Using standard setting for your workbook really speeds up your workbook and your building process. Using letters for numbers is a big quick win in my opinion. And how you could create uh, using one calculated field, you could create multiple calculated fields just from one calculation editor. I've also shown you two extra bonus ones, which was the right click feature, a right click and drag, or options left click if you have a Mac. And I've shown you the hidden feature of using renaming the TWBX to a .zip file, and you can actually open up what's inside, see the data, um, see any extra images that are in there. So those are things that I definitely wish I knew before. It's taken me a few years to know these tips and see these tips, and I hope they are valuable to you and you can use them during your Tableau career. Um, You can follow us on LinkedIn. We have multiple blogs coming out. If you want to get in touch with us, you can use info@theinformationlab.nl. I'm also on LinkedIn, Dan Verkerk. Um, Connect with me, share your tips with me. I'm more than willing to have a chat. We've had multiple sessions in the past. This is the last session of the first quarter. We've talked about a lot of different things, just simple things. They're also on YouTube. Not all of them have been added to YouTube, but they'll be added to YouTube really, really soon. I hope you enjoyed these sessions. Let me know through LinkedIn or any hints through uh, this chat as well if you like them, and we'll do more of these types of sessions. So I'm wishing you all a great day. I will